Now I know for a fact that a bunch of you have been quite keen for this one, and who am I to possibly disappoint you all? That is of course until you realise that I have some pretty spicy takes and there is going to be some contention in the comments, I'm sure, about the placements of some of my choices here. So let's get something off my chest first and make it abundantly clear. I don't feel there is a single bad Porcupine Tree album, and I am of the opinion that an easy case can be made for any of these albums to be a justified top pick of the discography. Yes, even that one, and especially that one. So do bear in mind before we continue, Porcupine Tree are one of those rare bands who've managed somehow over the past several decades to never truly put a single foot wrong. But as I have endeavoured to rank these, I've also taken on the responsibility involved with the internet disagreeing with some of my choices here. But enough of my prattle, let's get right into things. "13 years after the band went on hiatus, Porcupine Tree rose again in 2022. Closure Continuation is an album that feels both overdue and a little overwhelmed by its own legacy. There's a sleek, modern polish to it, but also a restraint that keeps it from hitting the emotional highs of past records. Tracks like Harridan and Chimera's Rex do flex their muscles, but never quite unleash the kind of narrative or sonic weight that I know the band was once capable of. Honestly, Closure Continuation feels a little bit more like a Steven Wilson solo album with Gavin and Richard as guests, rather than a triumphant return of Porcupine Tree. Now it's got great moments. Of the New Day is lush and melancholic, and Herd Culling almost captures the old magic, but the spark's a bit too managed, too clean, too clinical. It's kind of like seeing an old friend and realising the chemistry's changed a little bit. Now despite my reservations though, Dignity might be the band's most underrated ballad since the Lightbulb Sun era. This isn't a full resurrection, it's more of a quiet gathering at the altar, but I'm glad it exists. Sometimes closure doesn't come with fireworks, but with the faint echo of what once was. And maybe the teased continuation will see some of the band's earlier psychedelia come back into the fold in the years to come. I'm sitting in the concrete, I'm listening for a heartbeat. I went into this list with one objective. On the Sunday of Life would not receive the disrespect that nearly every single video ranking of the band's discography inevitably gives it. Porcupine Tree's first studio album is pure astral nonsense, and I kind of love it for that. This is Steven Wilson before the razor-sharp songwriting, before the crushing dynamics, back when he was just a bedroom psychonaut armed with a 4-track and way too many Pink Floyd records. On the Sunday of Life isn't so much an album as it is a cosmic curiosity cabinet, shall we say. Half ambient art project, half psychedelic goof fest, Steven Wilson hadn't yet discovered the crushing weight of existential dread, so instead he gives us tracks like Jupiter Island and The Nostalgia Factory, songs that feel like acid trips taken while sat in a beanbag chair. It's an album of humble, weird beginning, yet buried beneath the patchouli haze and MIDI drum kits is the kernel of what Porcupine Tree would become. Radioactive Toy in particular hints at the band's potential to fuse atmosphere and anguish into something genuinely powerful. As a time capsule, it's essential. As a cohesive album, not so much. But there is still charm in hearing the blueprints of what the band would evolve into. Plus, Nine Cats is unironically one of my favourite Porcupine Tree songs ever, and I will frankly defend it to the death. Now this one is most assuredly one of the albums alongside the aforementioned Sunday of Life that tends to get the most flack from Porcupine Tree fans, and while I do see the criticisms, I also respect what Wilson was going for here. A long-form meditation on trauma, accidents, and unexpected interruptions in life. But the 55-minute title track often meanders in a way that doesn't really justify its sprawl. Now there are brilliant segments, the sinister pulse of the blind house, the swelling heartbreak of Time Flies, but they get buried under too many transitional sketches. The second disc, especially Bonnie the Cat, actually shows a more agile, interesting band. In a way, the album is its own incident, interrupted brilliance that never quite recovers from itself. That being said, it's not a total void. Octane Twisted and Kneel and Disconnect are delicate, lingering moments, and I'll admit the musicianship is basically faultless. But for a band so known for excavating human fragility, the incident feels kind of algorithmic in a way. More like a clever exercise in arrangement than a gripping journey. Now, it's the final album before their original hiatus, and you can kinda hear them splintering in real time over its somewhat bloated runtime. Now, this for me is where the tree began to bear fruit. Up the downstair is the sound of Porcupine Tree learning to mix their dreamscapes with a bit of dread. The title track is a throbbing, trip-hop tinged journey through lucid nightmares, and Fade Away closes the record with a haunting intimacy that's straight up gorgeous. It's not yet as focused or as emotional as what comes later, but it's an undeniably hypnotic experience. It ditches some of the whimsy from Sunday of Life for darker, spacier textures, the synths swirl, the drums, programmed as they are, kick harder, and the ideas begin to truly coalesce. There is an adolescent charm to how Wilson navigates genre here. Progressive rock, ambient, even club-adjacent electronica all swirl together. Synesthesia is an early standout that lives up to its name, a kaleidoscope of swirling textures and syncopated rhythms. This is the album that makes you realise Porcupine Tree weren't just dabbling, they were really building something. Oh, the transitional album par excellence. Mwah! Lightbulb Sun is caught between the lush melancholy of Stupid Dream and the heaviness of In Absentia, and it juggles both worlds with surprising grace and fluidity. She's Moved On and The Rest Will Flow are pristine pop-prog gems, aching, vulnerable, and wrapped in crystalline production, but it's in the subtleties where the album really shines. Lightbulb Sun is the band's arguably most radio-friendly album, and for some that's definitely a compliment. It's gorgeously produced, immaculately arranged, and full of earworms. Where We Would Be and the title track are stealth classics, and Hate Song proves they can still go long form when they feel like it. Feel So Low closes the album with a gut punch, while Russia on Ice begins to toy with the darker, heavier textures that would soon define their next phase. It is an album of balances and bittersweets, introspective without being indulgent, sad without being suffocating, the quiet confidence of a band just before they break big. I'm sorry that I'm not like you. This is the record where I felt that the band truly became Porcupine Tree, no longer just a studio project but a full-fledged emotional force of nature. Stupid Dream is perhaps their most approachable record, but don't mistake that for simplicity. Songs like Even Less and Stop Swimming are gut-wrenching in their honesty, turning everyday malaise into existential poetry. Stupid Dream is raw, it is bruised and almost painfully sincere. It's the album where Wilson started singing about real people problems. Lost love, artistic alienation, midlife fatigue, and he's wrapped it up in some of the band's tightest songwriting ever. The production is clean, it is direct, the hooks are razor sharp, and Wilson's songwriting is more character-driven than ever before. There's also a certain kind of theatricality to it all, a sense that these songs are not just personal but universally resonant. Stupid Dream is not flashy, but it cuts deep. It's the first time they sounded like they truly know who they are. Now this is where the darkness fully arrives. With In Absentia, Porcupine Tree plunges into the heavier end of the spectrum, but never at the expense of nuance. Blackest Eyes opens with a riff that could crush a Buick, but swerves into a haunting chorus. Trains is often regarded as one of the greatest songs Wilson has ever written and is a favourite on the live stage, all bittersweet harmonies and childhood trauma refracted through acoustic strings and his now frankly trademark melancholy. The production is massive, the lyrics are bleak, the riffs are punishing, but for all its technical brilliance, I do find it emotionally a bit colder than what came before or after. The album wrestles with themes of like mental illness, serial killers, and fractured identity, but it never feels exploitative. It's horror as human truth. The Sound of Muzak is a sly jab at modern culture's obsession with empty content, and Collapse the Light into Earth is the sound of that culture's emotional wreckage. This one really changed Wilson's fortunes and made the band a household name. Often hailed as the Pink Floyd one, and not without reason, The Sky Moves Sideways leans hard into dreamy soundscapes, extended jams, and lyrical mysticism. It's Wilson at his most cosmically curious, untethered by structure, letting the songs unfold like constellations in the skies above. The title track sprawls across the album like an astral bridge between Wish You Were Here and the band's own impending evolution, and it is absolutely glorious. This is the band building cathedrals out of delay pedals and introspective whimsy. The two-part title track is a nebula of swirling synths and whispering guitars, whilst Dislocated Day and The Moon Touches Your Shoulder hint at darker horizons for the band. But for all of its galactic splendour, it sometimes feels a little too distant. The emotional through-line gets lost in all the mist, and overall it's an album that rewards patience more than passion. It's best enjoyed in the dark with your third eye open and your expectations set to float. The Sky Moves Sideways is an oft-neglected album, but perhaps not quite so much as my next pick. Don't let the relative obscurity of this one fool you. Signify is where it all comes together. The ambient experiments, the Floyd worship, the prog aspirations, all crystallise into a lean, haunting, tightly wound masterpiece. Sleep of No Dreaming and Waiting Phase 1 and 2 are aching slow burners, but the real power lies in the record's shadowy cohesion. Every track feeds into the next like a nightmare you can't wake up from. This is one of the most potent albums from the band's overlooked psychedelic era. Every moment feels like a sinister, spiteful redress about politics, religion, and the significance of our own lives, and it is a dramatically underrated gem in the band's crown. The title track kicks down the door with a powerful drive that splits the difference between krautrock and King Crimson, while tracks like Idiot Prayer drench the whole thing in a kind of post-apocalyptic atmosphere. This is Wilson writing with cinematic intent, and it shows. A pivotal album that deserves far more love than it's getting. Okay, so hear me out, okay. I know this one isn't technically considered one of the studio albums, but frankly, bollocks to that. Voyage 34 deserves to be here. It's every bit as worthy of inclusion, and I will not stand for any slander that suggests otherwise. This four-part psychedelic opus is the band's boldest experiment and still one of their most mesmerising. Structured like a guided acid trip gone completely sideways, the spoken word narration feels almost tongue-in-cheek at first, but it gradually transforms into something much more unsettling. Musically, it's sprawling, hypnotic, almost ritualistic. The guitar tones shimmer like heat mirages and the electronic textures pulse like a hallucinating heartbeat. It's as immersive as ambient music can get without losing its edge. Now, I used to listen to this album on repeat while studying for my finals at university, so I don't know, maybe we've got some biases here, because it kind of has a certain personal connection for me that I just can't disassociate from, and it does feel like this one is hard-coded into my own personal musical DNA. You don't just listen to Voyage 34, you dissolve into it. It scratches an itch that most albums don't even acknowledge. This isn't one for casual listeners, but for those of you who are willing to surrender to the trip, transcendent. Porcupine Tree's most focused, furious, and frankly near-flawless record. Fear of a Blank Planet is a scathing indictment of digital numbness, adolescent disconnection, and pharmaceutical sedation. But somehow it's also tender and it's breathtaking. The title track barrels forward with furious clarity, and Anesthetize is one of the greatest prog epics of the 21st century. Towering, tragic, and technically astonishing. The album is cohesive, it is angry, it's mournful, and terrifyingly prescient. And Richard Barbieri's keyboard work on this one? Next level. The album feels like it was carved from a dark chunk of obsidian. Every moment sharp-edged and precise, and even the ballads like My Ashes carry unbearable weight. There's no bloat, no misstep, just a grimly beautiful howl into the void. If this were their final album, what a hell of a goodbye that would have been. The climax of Sleep Together might very well be one of the finest things the band has ever done. The goosebumps, the guilt, the panic and fear it sets off, just a masterstroke of songwriting, and is yet to be equalled as an album closer by the band. And here it is, the crown jewel. Deadwing is the perfect distillation of everything Porcupine Tree does best. Towering riffs, haunting melodies, eerie atmosphere, and songwriting that feels as literary as it is emotional. Arriving somewhere but not here is their clear magnum opus, a 12-minute epic that builds from delicate unease to absolute annihilation. Lazarus is heartbreak in 4/4 time, shallow shreds with the best of them, and glass arm shattering leaves a lingering mark on your very soul. What makes Deadwing so special is how cinematic it feels. Originally it was tied to an unmade horror screenplay, so it kind of plays out like a ghost story in album form. It's mysterious, it's terrifying, but oddly intimate. This is Porcupine Tree at the absolute height of their powers and feels like a masterpiece among masterpieces. Now, special additional mention has to go to Lazarus, a song that means the world to me. Its gentle piano and aching vocals bring me to my partner of 17 years now, and every time I hear it, it's like I can see his face and hear his voice being right there with me. That's what music does at its best. It becomes personal, it becomes real, it becomes yours. Deadwing isn't just the best Porcupine Tree album for me, it's one of the greatest albums ever made. And so there we have it, my own personal take on Porcupine Tree's extensive discography. Now, I'm quite certain my choices will have ruffled some feathers, especially my inclusion of Voyage 34 and placing it so high in the list. Oh, Ian, why not include recordings? Why not include nil recurring or metanoia then? Because it's my list and I say so, that's why. In truth, if you wanted to include nil recurring with Blank Planet, then sure, that probably would be number one. But I've done the list now and I'm not looking backwards. So let's get to the real fun of these videos. What are your picks for the best and worst Porcupine Tree albums? Have I disrespected Closure Continuation too much? Is Signify significantly higher than it deserves? Let's talk, guys. Get your rankings in the comments down below. If you did make it all the way to the end without leaving a mean comment about how wrong I am, then thank you very much indeed for watching. Please do leave a thumbs up if you liked the video, please do tell your friends about little old me, and please do consider throwing a subscription to the channel if you've been enjoying my particularly irreverent content so far. But until next time, guys, as always, keep your rhyme signatures pretty odd.